Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm going to make my centerpiece the full moon in Cancer of the 6th of January 2023. And of course, I'm going to be talking about a whole lot of other things as well. Now, because this is the new year, it's a new year video, even though I'm recording it before Christmas, it's a new year video. And of course, we're all thinking about 2023. What's it going to be like? Is it going to be different from 2022, 2021, 2020? And will it be good for us? We always think of these kind of things, which is where astrology comes in. So, of course, I've written my big forecasts, sign by sign for you, and they will be on Astrolutely just at the turn of the year. Now, in those, I do talk about the focal things of the year, the things I think are important. And then I look at the broader planetary cycles and what they mean, what their process is. And that is sign by sign. And occasionally I'll pick out certain birthday groups that I think need to focus a little bit more on what I'm talking about. And of course, in each of those forecasts, there's what I call the overview, and that's giving you an astrological kind of bird's eye view of 2023. So what I want to say before I head into this kind of video is that 2023 is different. It's different from 2020, 2021, 2022, and there's a real reason why it is different. For those 3 years, we have been beset by a really, different planetary alignments. I mean, very difficult. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which dominated 2020, and you don't need me to tell you about 2020 with the pandemic. 2021, Saturn, and Uranus now 90 degrees away from each other all the time. And the same in 2022. We had that big alignment, which caused an incredible amount of friction and frustration. We're leaving that behind. Planets are moving into, the slower moving planets are moving into different signs. So there's different areas of each one of your charts being different, being focused on. But in general, we've left that dynamic behind. We're into new things. Pluto in Aquarius, well, we'll talk about that another time. So that's the first thing I want to say. It is different. Is it different good? Is it different bad? Well, of course, we're taking through into 2023 some of those situations that were already difficult and challenging in 2022. And so suddenly on January the 1st, 2023, they don't all clear up and go away. We are taking our problems individually as well as globally into this coming year, but with different outcomes. So let's get on with this video. This is all about the full moon in Cancer. It's the first full moon of the year, and this is called the full moon, not the full moon, it's called the wolf moon. Now, the reason it was probably given that kind of name was because in the northern hemisphere, especially in the northern parts of the northern hemisphere, where it's really frigid, the wolves, hungry, made a lot of noise, they howled. And so this is why it got its name, the wolf moon. And I rather like it. There's something about wolves that has certainly become a little bit more interesting over the last few years. And I think it's a kind of gives you an image of a moon that's got a lot of attack going for it. And so that perhaps in terms of maybe us being hungry for whatever it may be in our lives, the wolf moon says, go for it. Well, that's a little bit of nonsense almost. But this full moon in Cancer is in its own home, so to speak. The moon rules Cancer. So it's a pretty important full moon. The sun in Capricorn, the moon in Cancer. And so the moon in Cancer, just like really the moon itself, has a lot to do with home, family, emotions. It has to do with motherhood and the power of the feminine. So all those sort of things are really brought to the fore on this full moon. Now, all full moons are about closure and completion. And I think this is a very interesting full moon for that reason, because it falls on the 6th of January, which is 12th night. And what do we do on 12th night? Well, we take down all the Christmas decorations, we box them up, put them away for next year. And often when we do that, our homes, moon in Cancer, look a little bare. And suddenly we start to see all the things that we've been living with and not noticing. So that often inspires a feeling, I've got to paint that wall. I'm not going to live with that chair anymore. So there are lots of things about this full moon on a very practical, mundane level that mean we're going to have a clear out. We're going to get rid of the things that we don't need. And of course, that has a much more extended meaning in the sense that at New Year, we also need to think about what we want to accomplish in the next 12 months. And we need to look at what is standing in the way of the accomplishing of our dreams, our goals, our plans. Well, often it's about time. And with the sun in Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, time is very important. So a lot of us waste a lot of time. And we waste a lot of time every day because we do the same things every day, because that gives our day shape. We have to get up, we have breakfast, or we don't have breakfast, we take the kids to school, we go to work, we don't go to work, we go shop, what is it? Every day we do certain things, and it's a kind of clock time that we do it. And half the time we've got other things that we do or fill in our day that could be better not done at that time. So we need to create space daily in our lives so that we start to begin to fulfill our plans. It's really time and motion. But we think about this at this particular full moon, given the sun is in Cancer, Capricorn, the moon is in Cancer. It's appropriate. Now, there's another thing about this full moon in Cancer, is if we see it as a bookend, we see the other bookend stretching back in time to the 29th of June, when there was a new moon in Cancer. So the 6-month time span between that and the full moon on the 6th of January is a whole little cycle all on its own. And if you think back to that time, maybe you did begin something, or maybe something happened around that time, and it's going to have its completion around the time of the full moon. And remember, although we look at the full moon day, so to speak, as the most important thing, we want to get the full value from the full moon when it is full. It has a 2-week waning cycle, so that at any point in those 2 weeks, what I'm talking about or what I'm going on to talk about is appropriate. So this idea that something began in June, end of June, early August, and it's now completed is a good way to look at what's going on, because in many ways, when we do begin something and it then has a gestation time to its completion, we get to really see where we are with it, and we can make some good decisions about its future. Maybe it really is valuable still, the project, the thing that we started at that time, and we'll go on to build it even more. On the other hand, it may have done its day. And of course, relationships really fit into that category, don't they? You know, 3 months, 6 months, it seems to be a period when the relationship shifts gear. And so we think about, you know, is this going to work? Has this relationship got legs? And I think for a lot of us, January the 6th is about a relationship. And also, having come through Christmas, New Year, when we're often forced to be with people, maybe we love them tremendously, but we can't really live with them. And it's those experiences that make us feel, you know, I'm not going to do this anymore. So this full moon has a lot to do with reflection, as always, but on marriage, on long-term relationships, and just whether it's still got mileage in it. That's another important thing to think about. So the other thing that I want to do really is to have a look at how this full moon looks in the context of the rest of everything going on at the time, which I'm going to do now. I'm going to put up the chart of the full moon. As you can see, I have set this for London, and I know I'm a Londoner, so to speak, but this has nothing to do with my prejudices. It has really to do with the fact that we can see that full moon very clearly. We can see the moon up there in the 10th house at 16 degrees of Cancer and 22. and we can see the sun at the opposite point, Capricorn 1622. So we can really see it very, very clearly. Now, as far as the time goes for this full moon, it's happening on the 6th at 23 hours and 9 minutes UTC. That's GMT in old money. So you can subtract, go forward or back, depending where you are in the world, to figure out exactly where it is in your city, in your country. But if we look at this chart and we look at where all the planets are, they're in one kind of hemisphere. I know there's a little omega symbol sort of standing out from the rest of them. That's the south node, north node being the opposite point. But the nodes aren't planets. They're the points of where the path of the moon intersects with the ecliptic path of the sun, the imaginary path of the sun. And we don't include that in any kind of shaping that we're looking at. And, you know, I'm very keen on shapings. I've done a whole section on shaping in my book, The Art of Interpretation. And I think it's a very dynamic and immediate way of being able to tell something about a chart. And whenever we look at a whole lot of planets grouped in one hemisphere, we're talking about a bowl shaping. So what is a bowl shaping? A bowl shaping is about pouring something into one half and then pouring it out into the empty half. So bowl people and bowl situations are about accumulating stuff, reprocessing it and giving it out. Often bowl people have a mission in life and they feel, well, they have to find what their mission is, but when they find it, they give all their experience and knowledge, everything that they've accumulated, they pour it out into other people's lives. So that's just a very interesting thing about that bowl shaping. But if we go through these different planets in different areas of the chart, we can see that Mercury is retrograde. And Mercury turns retrograde on the 29th of December, just before New Year. Now, the thing to remember about that retrograde Mercury is it's not the worst thing in the world. We have a retrograde Mercury several times a year, 3 or 4 times a year. And although it can get in the way of smooth journeys and getting from A to B in a logical way, it has its upside, because the upside is that it gives us time to review things, to go back over decisions we've made and think, you know what, I want to do something different. And of course, it can be about the past coming back into the present, so that in some way an element or an incident or a person from the past is going to be relevant to your present. So let's not always beat a retrograde Mercury over the head, so to speak. Let's also embrace its positive qualities. But I would say all that period over Christmas, getting into the new year and beyond, Mercury will turn direct again on the 18th of January, so it's quite a long time. There are going to be problems with travel. And of course, depends where you are in the world, but probably weather is one factor to bear in mind. But also, if you're living in Blighty, which is where I'm living, then you've got all sorts of strikes, train strikes and postal strikes and goodness knows whatever else. So things are really on a giant go slow already, even before we've got to retrograde Mercury. So I think if you're trying to get away for New Year, the usual advice is just to take more time than you think it's going to take and make all sorts of plan Bs so that you can, you've got everybody's, address and number, and you've got things that you might need. You wouldn't normally take necessarily on a journey, but they could come in handy. That's just a precaution to take on a retrograde Mercury. On New Year's Eve itself, you can probably see Venus there in the chart here. It's in the kind of 5-6 o'clock position. Venus is in Aquarius at the time of the full moon. But 6 days earlier, New Year's Eve, coming into New Year's Day, Venus is exactly conjunct Pluto. Now that's very powerful. And I think if you have a birthday around about the 17th of the month, but particularly if we're talking about the 17th of January, the 17th of July, the 17th of April, the 17th of October, then that Venus-Pluto conjunction is really connecting with your natal sun. So that means this is the power to transform. Always with Pluto, we're talking about transformation. We're talking about reformation, reformation. So Pluto changes the landscape, particularly if this triggers anything in your chart. And that's a good and positive thing to think about, because we do need to reconfigure our landscape sometimes. Maybe we need to do it literally and dig the garden up and change it. But I'm sort of speaking in a metaphorical way and thinking about the parts of our lives that really do need remaking. And I think instead of, sometimes when we think about Pluto and we think of death and rebirth, those are such emotive words, aren't they? And I think we get a bit scared. Whereas if we think about we're remaking something, we're redoing it, we're, reinventing, then it becomes a much more positive kind of influence to deal with. So that Venus-Pluto conjunction on New Year's Eve tells me there are going to be a lot of powerful declarations made around that time. It's a very powerful period, so we can also expect a lot of things going on in the world to be extremely powerful. But in terms of our own journey, if we know that Venus-Pluto conjunction is relevant to us, let's please think of what needs to be remade and reformed in our lives. And in that process, what needs to go and what needs to be prepared for. As I talked about, 12th night, taking down the decorations, we also need to think about what's in our homes that's clutter. What do we need to get rid of to create a brighter, better space? And sometimes that includes friendships, relationships, practices, habits. Let's change it. Let's create space in our lives. Now, on the 3rd of January, Venus moves into Aquarius, which is very good news for all Aquarians. Venus will move through Aquarius about a month. It'll take you through to about, early February. And it's a good thing to have in your sign, because Venus attracts good things. It's, as I sometimes say, it's like having a little lucky angel on your shoulder, and so that you will be lucky. It means that even things that are difficult would have been worse if it weren't for the presence of Venus in your sign. But of course, we think about romance, love, money with Venus as well. So this makes it a time ripe and fertile for all these things to happen in your lives, and where perhaps your focus should be. And of course, a lot of us think about, our relationship at New Year. Are we going to go forward? Are we going to get married, engaged, or are we going to get divorced? So Venus in Aquarius is particularly applicable in those terms to Aquarians, but also to Leos and to Taurus and Scorpio, because Venus will be squaring your sun at some point. And then we think about Venus's job is to create a beautiful life for us. And often there are things standing in the way of that beautiful life. And therefore Venus goes to war to help us get rid of them. So those are certain things we need to think about. 12th of January, that would just sort of take us to the end of this period that I'm covering on this video. Mars turns direct. Now, this is a long story. Mars has been in Gemini since the 20th of August. It turned retrograde on the 30th of October, and now, hey presto, it's turning direct on the 12th of January, and will finally exit Gemini at the end of March. So what a long period is that? So it depends where Gemini is in your chart and what Mars has been activating, because Mars is an agent provocateur, gets you moving and motoring. Yes, there's aggravation. Yes, there can be conflict, but also you can get a lot accomplished. And I think particularly if you're a Gemini and you've had Mars going through your sign all these months, either it has been a time which you would say, oh, it's been aggravation on sticks. But within that is this idea that, why are things aggravating? It's because they need attending to. And if we attend to them and we make progress, we can change things for the better. So that's sort of my sort of brief look. Yeah, there is one other thing I want to say about this period. If we look at the full moon, and we can see 16 Cancer, 16 of Capricorn, if we're hunting around looking for anything else near the 16 mark, yes, we come to Mercury at 17 of Capricorn, but we also come to Uranus in Taurus at 15. So the moon is sextiling Uranus at full moon, and the sun is trining it. Now that's an angle of harmony, but whenever you're dealing with Uranus, you're still dealing with the principle of revolution. So maybe we can call this a gentle revolution. This full moon is indicating that. But whenever Uranus is in the mix, we need to think of new ways forward, because old roads have run out. And even though this is what we would call a harmonious link to this planet, it's still going to demand that we make changes. So that is my little bit of looking at the chart. We've done that. And so now what I want to do is to take us sign by sign through this full moon, through this period of time. It's not just about the full moon, it's about where the sun is, because the sun is on a journey through a particular area of the horoscope. So if I begin with you, Cancer, and I think about this full moon, it's in your sign, the only one this year, so it's mighty powerful. And it's bringing out all the things that I talked about a little bit earlier. It's bringing out feminine power, the power of the feminine. Even if you're a bloke, this is about the power of the feminine, impacting your life in some way, and certainly thinking about it. But things to do with your home, your family, but your personal status. Whenever the full moon is in our sign, we are empowered. And so we need to take charge of, well, not our destiny, that's too big a word, but ourselves. We need to recognize that with the emotional power we have, aligned to our physical selves and the real world, if you like, the inner world, the outer world, we're invincible. So this full moon is a time of empowerment, Cancer. But of course, the sun, opposite, is moving through the 7th house, and it'll be continuing its journey through the 7th house for the next few weeks. It'll go into the 8th house, into Aquarius, around about the 20th of January. So this is all about relating. It's about people in your life. And I suppose the full moon accentuates the good, the bad, and the ugly about the people in your life, and how much either your heart bubbles over with joy because of certain people in your life, and how much that overwhelms you with a sense that I'm not liking this. So I think a lot of Cancerians were making some pretty important decisions about a relationship during January at least, but maybe particularly around this full moon. If we come to Capricorn, of course, the sun is in Capricorn right now, and it's been in Capricorn since the 21st of December. So you are in charge of your life to a certain extent. The sun is giving you its full glory in your sign. Again, it's very personal. So we're looking at a time when you need to take things personal. You need to think about your personal wishes, your personal ambitions, what directly affects you personally. We come to this full moon on the 6th of January in the following 2 weeks, which is the lunar cycle, so to speak, and we think about all the people in our lives. Do they reflect ourselves completely? Are they good reflectors, or are they bad reflectors? And that maybe you too need to have a look at certain relationships in your life. Remember, we're having a clear out on January the 6th, on 12th night. Who are all those people who really don't bring out the best in you, who don't have your best interests at heart? Recognize them. Maybe you don't have to do anything big and bold at the time of the full moon and decide to phase that relationship out of your life, that friendship, that working association, whatever it is that you are thinking about. I don't need this anymore. But it's certainly worth embracing at full moon as something that would be worthy of your attention. Full moon, of course, is about completion as well. So there are definitely going to be some Capricorns at this time. Perhaps some of you with that 17th of January birthday or around that time may be thinking, you know, this person completes me and I want to make this union permanent. That would be a perfect expression of this full moon as well. So now we move on to Aries, and we would look here at the moon itself in the 4th house. So that's right in the area of home and family. And we would be looking at the sun moving through the 10th house. Now, I often think about a full moon on this axis, because this is your life direction axis, that it's about balance. It's about what's out of whack. Is my life in balance? Is my private life, my home life, my family life in perfect balance with my career and what I'm doing out in the world and all those material concerns that I have? So this full moon is about showing you what's out of whack. Now, you may not be able to do anything about it immediately, but it will be a good idea to think, Aries, I need to get my life back in balance. I need my work, private life balance a lot better than this. But it's also this full moon about the culmination of something. So it may, represent to you a job done, whether you've been working on a project or something for a while, and hey presto, it's done, which gives you a feeling of great satisfaction. But it can be job done, meaning that a job is at an end. Maybe you already know that. Maybe you're even coming up to retirement. So this makes eminent sense. On the other hand, with aspects that we've got coming through January, it may be that a job is on its way out, and you will come to understand that as we go through January. But you know what, Aries? Endings, what do? They start new beginnings. And so in the aftermath, there will be a space cleared, thoughts discussed, and a new plan forward. Remember, Aries, you have Jupiter in your sign right through until May the 16th. So, you've got a kind of rocket booster to getting where you want to get. So this full moon might show you clearly what's not working anymore and what needs to go. And of course, it could be a time of family stresses and strains, especially, again, coming through that holiday period where it's not always easy to be with our family. And maybe there have been some issues that have come up that have caused a lot of kerfuffle, let's put it that way. And that needs putting to bed. And that full moon helps you come to a certain sense of peace with it. If we look at Libra, well, we're looking at the moon in the 10th house, but the sun is in the 4th house. So the sun has already been moving through this area of the chart right up until full moon, and it will continue to do so till about the 20th of January. A lot of attention on the home. I mean, this could be anything from, a lot of painting and decorating and a lot of purchases for the house, or maybe it's about turning the home into a business area, or maybe it's becoming an Airbnb. You're doing things on the home with a view to make it more profitable, or giving you some new kind of concepts from your home. So the full moon is saying a chapter is over and a new one's beginning, and may have all to do with the things that I've just mentioned. But for you too, a bit like Aries, it is about finding balance in life. And again, you need to think about, is this right? Or you'll probably feel it. You don't even need to sit down and have a think about it, because it will be evident to you that your life is out of balance, and that requires addressing as you go through, the next couple of weeks. It may be too for you that something does need to come to an end, and maybe you know exactly what that is, saying, you've got a job coming to an end. Or it may be that you're moving home, so that you know that you're spending the last period of time somewhere where you've been for a while. And I think it's good to have endings and beginnings. It's good to celebrate the memories that we have, but also life moves on. So whatever has ended for you or is shortly about to end, and we're looking at this whole area of both home, family, roots of life, but also your career, where you're heading in life, the idea of an ending is, of course, a beginning. That's where the focus needs to be. If we come to my fixed group and we start with Leo, well, the moon for you is in the 12th house and the sun is in the 6th house. So we're looking at the 6-12 axis. So this can have a lot to do with health. So, and full moon puts a lot of stress on our emotional body. So if you're a bit stressed at this time of the full moon, you may find that you're not very well. You don't feel very well. You're always something temporary and you'll feel as bright as a button a few days later. But it's worth remembering around the 6th. So that's the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You may not be on all 4 cylinders. You may be a little below par. And that means avoid doing too much. Avoid being with people who stress you out. And if you are feeling stressed because you've got situations in your life that are really quite difficult and you're worrying about them, remember you're going to feel at the peak of your worry at that time. And it's probably disproportionate to the worries that they really are. You know, I talk sometimes about the middle of the night, the 3 o'clock. No good decision is ever made at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's because everything that's bad feels twice as bad at 3 o'clock in the morning. And if you activate something, then you're always going to wish you hadn't done it the following morning when the sun is out and you're feeling pretty well, your normal self. So remember, around that full moon time, don't really issue ultimatums. Don't sort of say, I've had enough. You may feel it, but don't say it, because you may want to change your mind quite shortly thereafter. But the sun moving through the 6th house is a very interesting time as well, because, as I said, it goes on until the 20th of January. And this is an area where we find our purpose. We're seeking to find a purpose. So often what happens when the sun is moving through the 6th house is that someone asks us to do something, asks us to be of service to them. And that's something we should do. I always think about another very good word for what happens in the 6th house is savor. And that is the spiritual kind of path. It's that what you do in life, your work in life is your spiritual purpose. And so a lot of that can happen around this full moon time. But it may also be a period when you do feel you're doing a lot of work and you're doing a lot of things for other people, and perhaps you're not getting a lot of thanks for it. It is a time to right the balance in this area of life if you're doing too much for other people. And I think also it's a time to put your health and well-being under the microscope and see what habits, what behaviors are coming into, are perhaps not allowing you to be at your strongest, fittest, and your best. And therefore, this full moon is about changing that, completing that cycle, starting another one in the following couple of weeks. Now, Aquarius, other way round. You've got the moon itself in the 6th house, but the sun is moving through the 12th house. Now, this is a really dodgy period. Well, maybe it's not dodgy, but the 12th house, so misunderstood. A lot of people really don't get it at all. And it is an area of preparation in many ways, because it's from the 12th, we move into our first house, ourselves, if you like. So there's a lot of dissolution going on, a lot of things being processed. And we do a lot of processing in the night when we're asleep. Our psyche is running through things, it's doing housekeeping. So it's processing stuff, getting rid of some, polishing some things up, and delivering some important messages to us. So this full moon is about messages from the unconscious mind. Postcards from the edge, postcards from the unconscious mind. That's what the full moon is about. So the things that come to you, the dreams that you have, could be very, very pertinent. And it's worth writing them down, thinking about them, pondering on them. The same with strong intuitions, that kind of in the pit of your tummy feeling, you know what? I think this, or I've finally understood that. But going through the idea of the 12th house, I sometimes call this the house of shadows, in that, you know, things aren't very clear. You're seeing things in shadow. There's something hidden. You're not seeing the full picture. And that's worth bearing in mind, because if you are stressing out about one or more situations, you know, you've not got the whole picture. So, you know, until you do, there's no point really stressing out about it. Actively, what is good to do while the sun is moving through the 12th is to sort of follow those kind of practices that are conducive to the health of mind, body, and spirit. So it is about meditation. It is about getting your health checked out, having an MOT on your health, dental health. It's about thinking about the health of mind, body, and spirit and getting it fixed. So by the time the sun comes into Aquarius on the 20th of January, right into your own sign, you're already prepared. You've done a lot of work. But yes, the full moon itself might be a little stressful, and it will make you feel more emotionally overwhelmed. So remind yourself that's what's happening. A couple of days' time, you're going to feel very different. And so Taurus, for you, the moon is in the 3rd house and the sun is in the 9th house. So let's have a look, first of all, at the sun's passage through the 9th house, because that's been going on since just before Christmas and will go on until the 20th of January. During this time, the area the sun is moving through is called the area of far horizons, and it has a lot to do with literal far horizons. It's distant places, people at a distance, things on an international scale, things on an otherworldly scale, things to do with, you know, religion and the spiritual aspects of life, all those kind of things, education, knowledge. The sun moving through this area really brings those things into your experience. We put the full moon there, and we've got the culmination of something. So maybe it means you finished a period of study. You've been studying hard. You're either ready to take an exam or you've taken it and you've got the result. That full moon brings the result. And maybe it is about getting qualifications, or maybe it's simply something you've been looking at to acquire knowledge so that you can use it practically. So the full moon brings conclusions, brings a conclusion of some description. This is also a very legal part of the chart, the 9th house. So if you're currently involved in doing a lot of bureaucratic stuff, filling out forms and signing documents, that's your 9th house transit. So when we come to the full moon, it's a time, you know, really to, you know, to complete that contract. That's done, whether it is on the full moon itself, 6th of January, or whether it's in the following 2 weeks. There's kind of a contract is exchanged, it's done, it's signed and sealed. But I think also with this idea, when we're in the 9th house, we're looking quite far down the line, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Where are we going to be? Where do we want to be? So during the time the sun is moving through this area, periodically, it is a good idea to analyze those kind of ideas that you have. I'm not necessarily going to call them dreams, they could be, but it's how we see our lives in 5 and 10 years. What fills our life? Where are we? And while the sun is going through the 9th house, it's good to think about this periodically and check back with ourselves. Are we on trajectory? Have we any hope of being there in 5 years, 10 years? And if no, then it's time to start re-strategizing and reorienting ourselves in some way. And that full moon plays into that. It may be crystal clear that you're not going to get where you want to go because you're on the wrong trajectory. Okay, we come to the opposite side. So we look at Scorpio when the moon is in the 9th house, but the sun is in the 3rd house. The sun has been in 3rd house for a while. And this is what if the 9th house is our bigger world, the big wide world, then the 3rd house is our small world. That's a terribly important place. It's our neighborhood. It's the things that are in our lives all the time. And in the 3rd house, we use our voice. and we want to be heard. So it is a period while the sun moves through the third house to get our voice heard. Does it mean you start a YouTube channel or start talking to the world? That's getting your voice out there. But sometimes it's voicing your ideas to whoever's relevant, your team at work or your family or your friends. You've got ideas that you want to discuss. You want some feedback. You want to know if they're a go, if they will go. So that's a really important part of a third house transit. It may also be that you make a decision that you need more skills or you want to study something else. And so it's a great time to start exploring all of those kind of things, beginning a new study course, beginning a course which will give you extra qualifications or credentials, and you begin your journey as the sun moves through the third house. Now, here we are, throw a full moon in on the 6th of January, and maybe for some of you Scorpios that you do get the results of something. You know you've passed the exam, you know that you've got this deal, you know the contract is yours. So that's what that full moon is bringing into being, and it will be alive and well, the things I'm telling you about right through until we get to the 20th of January. So it's an important full moon, more important than perhaps it sounds at first, because who are we if we are not voicing our truth, our desires, our dreams, our everything? We have to voice them, and they have to be heard. And there's something about that full moon that's about being heard. Okay, so now our final group of signs, the mutable ones, I'm going to start with Pisces. And for you, this full moon is in the 5th house. So it means the sun is in the 11th house. Now, this is very interesting because as the sun moves through the 11th house, we start to think quite, well, a lot more about what is all this about? Why am I working this hard? Why am I doing this? Why is my life like this? I want to be more fulfilled. I want to be doing something that matters. So the sun going through this area is what it's getting at. And it might mean that you're busy, collaborating with people, whether for work, business, or for social reasons and personal reasons. So it's you with other people, all for one, one for all kind of thing. So it's you as part of a team, as part of a group. And it's showing you the value of group work. It's showing the value of not doing things on your own, but being part of a team. That's a principle as the sun moves through here. And it might also, throw up this idea of what's more fulfilling in life. Is it that you're on a treadmill earning the money, but you're not happy? And something about the sun's passage through this really illuminates that question. And you can go some way to answering your own question and taking steps to deal with it. And maybe, just maybe, it's the full moon that really encapsulates that. So at the time of the full moon, that whole thing about what am I doing? What is this all about? That's what that full moon is all about. And because the moon is in the 5th house, it's all about the self. It's like suddenly you as a small self in terms of the bigger self of the group, if you like. So it's like, what is the existential, tension between these two areas of life? One other thing about this full moon is that it's the end of a gestation period. And, we often think of a gestation period as a baby, 9 months of gestation, delivery, new baby. Well, you can stretch that out a little bit more and think of it as a project or something that has been gestating for a while. That full moon is saying it's done, it's ready to be seen. And if we go back to the idea of the 29th of June through to this full moon on the 6th, this idea that something began, it's ready for delivery. Is it going forward into something else more than itself? Or is it its journey done? So that's another thing to consider, Pisces, on this full moon. If we come to Virgo, we've got the sun moving through the 5th house. And in many ways, the 5th house has a lot to do with pleasure. And since the sun moved in there just before Christmas, hopefully you've had a lot of pleasure over the holidays. But it's much more than that, the fifth house. It's really about the self. It's about your inner child. It's about all sorts of things that are very important to you. And it's about creativity. And of course, there's procreativity and creativity. We can get creative doing anything, getting creative in the kitchen, creative with finances, creative with a paintbrush, so many different ways. And the sun moving through this area of the chart is knocking at the door saying, get creative. Virgo, get creative, one way or the other. But it can be procreative as well. So some Virgos will be bringing a new baby into the world, and that full moon is the emblematic of that. But it may also throw up the idea of becoming pregnant or wanting a baby. And this is also aligned, you know, when we think about the self, we think about procreativity, we're bringing something of ourself into the world. In this case, a real dimension of our physical self. That's why pregnancy and childbirth goes with the fifth house. But it's also about bringing something of ourselves into a piece of art or something like that. And it's also about romance, this house, because what do you need if you're going to have a baby? Well, you need a bit of romance, don't you? So this full moon might be about a romance. And again, going back to this 6-month period, 29th of June through to the 6th of January, did a romance begin at that time? Or maybe it was halfway through. And so we're talking about, the October period. If so, it's reached a turning point. And this full moon is throwing it up. It's saying, this is wonderful, we're going forward. Or, you know what, this isn't working at all. The full moon is about a conclusion, drawing a conclusion, also, well, reaching a conclusion, reaching the end. If we come now to Gemini, the moon is in the 2nd house, the sun in the 8th. Often with a 2nd 8th full moon, we're talking about a financial crunch point or a financial conclusion, which again brings us back to the idea of something being done and dusted. A sale is done, it's completed. So you've done it, it's great. That full moon says, aren't we lucky? We've achieved it. But if you've got financial issues, then that full moon is going to throw them up, and you are going to feel more stressed out about your finances than you would do at another time. Now, the thing is, it's a call to action, isn't it? If you've got a financial problem, the only thing to do with it is deal with it. Probably not on the full moon itself, which is Friday, probably a few days later on the Monday, or beforehand would be even better. But often what we feel at full moon is overwhelming. It doesn't deserve such emotional angst to it, and you need to remember that. But it is good sometimes to have a financial kind of crisis point, because after that you can get things sorted and you can really look at how to make finances a much better kind of getting them to run better. Because the moon is in the 2nd house, transitioning through there, it may suggest that it's at this point you learn something about a salary or a job or something that you earn money from. So it is all about either the completion of that, and so it's a good ending, or it's showing you, you know, this is not okay. I'm not being paid what I deserve. This is not deserved. I deserve better. It's that kind of full moon. Because the sun is moving through the 8th house, we're in the area of financial exchange. So it's a partner's money, the money we share with a partner, also a business partner, or the money we share with a company. We're thinking about banks, lending institutions, those kind of things. So this is time when, while the sun's moving through it, it's a good time to have dealings with financial companies with a view to improving our kind of position. It's a time for discussion and debate. The thing is that the financial partner is likely to be stronger than you are, and that just needs acknowledging, really. And that's how you deal with a negotiation. You don't come from a position of weakness but you do recognize that you might need them more than they need you. That might be just a simple understanding around the time of the full moon. But also sometimes inheritances and settlements, the full moon will say, it's ready, you know, that's done. Here's the inheritance, here's the settlement. And so there is a wonderful sense of completion on that. If we move now to Sagittarius, we've got the moon in the 8th house and the sun in the 2nd house. So really, since before Christmas and going through to about the 20th of January, you need to be really doing a lot of sorting of your own finances. You might need to explore things like, you know, is there a way that I could generate more income by what I do? And just giving some thought to it might allow you to come up with an idea. And the cost of living is high for every one of us. And so the ideas that we come to where we might generate more income to make things easier for ourselves is really important. Things don't just fall out of the sky, literally, any more than the moon falls out of the sky. You know, we have to generate our own, you know, ideas about how to make more money. But it's not just about that. It's also about the value of you as a person, which of course, you know, people pay as well. We feel full of value. But it's the same in a relationship. If someone is giving us a lot of love and making us feel great about ourselves, then that's great and we feel wonderful. So this full moon is going to make that an issue. So either at this full moon, you feel overwhelmed with love and appreciation for one reason or the other, or you suddenly feel, you know what, I'm not getting what I deserve. If in the case of the latter, that's what you're feeling. The important thing is to recognize your own value. Now, that's easier said than done. It's not an affirmation like, I deserve better than this, I am better than this, I am a wonderful person. It's not about doing that. It's about really thinking about what you bring to the table. What tangible things do you bring to the table? Even if those tangible things are a peaceful spirit or something like that, it doesn't have to be, you know, something physical. It can be who you are, what you bring to the table. And it's in acknowledging that which you know and that which defines you that's going to make you strong. And coming from that place where you know, this is me, this is my value, makes you so strong, even in a financial negotiation, because you could be dealing around the time of the full moon or in those 2 weeks after, could be dealing with financial organizations. And it's very, very important to recognize that you are a person of value in that, and that you have even a value to them in terms of your, you know, what you make or what you give into that system. That's what's important to remember. So we have gone through those 12 signs. And of course, I'm thinking about this, as I did in the beginning, the idea of going into 2023. And I think it's only human for us to hope that it will be better for us. Of course, we must do that. I mean, not every one of us is a glass half full person. A lot of us are glass half empty. We're more realistic and we think, well, it can't be any better. But it is a good plan to sort of think and say to ourselves, why can't it be better? Who said it can't be better? Even in this year where we are dragging along things that are partly responsible for all the general problems we all have with finance and fuel and energy, we know what they all are. Don't need me to itemize them. So we've got to deal with that bigger world thing. But that doesn't mean within our own small space, we can't make it a much better year by our own actions and decisions. And I think that's really important, because I think certainly with astrology and a lot of the other kind of divination systems, we might call them, there is a sense that when we go to see an astrologer or we're listening to what an astrologer has to say, we want the astrologer or the divinator to tell us exactly what's going to happen. But you see, I see things kind of differently. I think, what can you do? What can you have in your hands that charts your own progress? That's power. That's empowerment. So it is all about bringing the power back to ourselves and really being quite constructive with what we want to achieve in a year, with what we want to make better, what we don't want to have anymore. We have to really look at the reality of that and see how realistically we can get there. The other thing that I find a lot, and I'm just as guilty of this as anyone else, you know, I'm an Aries, so I want things to happen quickly. But I have learned in my life that things that take their time are often better. There's always a reason why things are taking their time. And I've come to respect the fact that if things don't happen when I want them to happen, there's a real reason for that. And you know, either I need to do more homework or whatever I need to do, but it will happen at the right time. So I sort of think of this in terms of what tips would I give you for the year ahead? All of you, all my lovely people, what I say. I would say this word, adjustment. Write it down. Stick it on the fridge under a fridge sticker or on your desk, wherever it's appropriate, because it is about adjustment. It means adjusting to circumstances all the time and not getting sandbagged by something that didn't happen or went wrong or whatever it was. Yes, you may feel sandbagged, but it requires adjustment. And if you think of your life in a series of adjustments to what's happened, you will be more successful and you will achieve what you want to achieve. I want to just throw something else here while I think about it. And it came up recently when I was working with someone. It's this idea when you're single that you talk about, I want someone to complete me. And it's something that a lot of people say. But the thing is that that's a false statement because nobody's going to complete you. You have to complete yourself. When you are whole, you are ready to be with someone else. But if you're only half, how can you be that for someone else? So the idea really behind this isn't just, you know, spouting off that idea of finding completion. What we want to say more is finding we are self-sufficient. We can achieve things ourselves. We are sufficient unto ourselves. So that's what we should be striving for. And if we've put the focus on becoming self-sufficient in all senses of that term, will be automatically ready to bring someone else into our lives who will complete us. Okay, that's the way around it. And that was just a little additive I didn't mean to put in there. I meant to come back to my tips for 2023, adjustment being one of them. The other little phrase that I quite like is accept and advance. And that's the important thing. Sometimes we have to accept a set of circumstances we didn't want, we don't like, we're a bit cross about, accept it. And when we accept it, we advance. And last but not least, I think this is the most important thing of all, and it goes back to our ideas of, I want it, why can't I have it? I have done all this work, why isn't it there? I've been this lovely person, why is my prince not there? You know, it's about every small step takes you to your goal. And it can be a small step that we hardly recognize, but as we take it, we are getting nearer our goals. And that really is the epitome, I think, of the ways, well, not just every small step, but the idea of adjustment and accept and advance. And now every step takes us nearer our objectives. I think those three things are going to keep you sane through 2023. And by the time we come to the end of it, and write down these things and see by the time we get to December 2023, just how much you have achieved in those 12 months. Okay, everybody, have a happy new year. And I'll be getting back to you in 2023 and keeping you abreast of things, all astrological, as we go. Bye for now.